Welcome to Turf Talks and Virtual Helpline. These live sessions will take place every Tuesday in September at noon. The sessions will be recorded for later viewing on the Henrico Extension website. My name is Terry Lautzenheiser, and I am the horticulture technician in Henrico County. Virginia Cooperative Extension brings research-based information to the localities we serve. Our master gardeners are a trained group of volunteers who extend the extension resources and programs available. The Henrico Extension Office is always here for you to diagnose plant problems and answer all your plant-related questions using research-based information. The Henrico office can be reached at 804-501-5160. At this time, our office is not open for walk-in consultations, so please call with your questions or use our Ask an Expert link on our website at henrico.us/extension. Today's session is being led by Davis Caskey. Davis became a Henrico Master Gardener in 2015. Davis is part of our Smart Lawns program. Our Smart Lawn program was suspended in 2020 year due to COVID, but should be back in 2021. Check our website in late March for information. Davis is also one of our speakers in the Speaker Bureau program. If you have any questions for Davis during the presentation, please type them in the chat box. At the conclusion of the presentation, we will answer those questions and then answer any other home and gardening questions that you might have. Davis, please go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you very much, Terry. We're glad to have everybody here today. This is the last in the series, and we'll be talking about weeds today. But fall is the time for our cool season grasses, primarily our tall fescues, red fescues, and similar types of grasses. The Smart Lawns program, as Terry mentioned, is really a comprehensive program presented by the Cooperative Service and is just a great assist to the residents in all of the areas in Virginia. Some of the common questions that we've gone over before is how do I use lime and how much do I use? Do I need to aerate when and so forth? What about fertilizer and how to control the weeds in my lawn? And it's the last of the series that we're going to be discussing today. To be a bit of a review, you need to know something about your soil. You need to know by doing a soil test because you need to know if you have to amend it, how much to amend and when to amend it, because it can both save you money or it can pollute depending on if you put too little or too much on. You need to aerate. Our soils in Henrico County tend to be have more clay in them than most. Toward the east end of the county, you get a bit more sand, but you need to be sure that the roots of the grass get plenty of air. You need to be right about your fertilizer. Again, too little, you don't get the results that you want. Too much, it tends to run off and it will pollute our river streams and ultimately the bay. And we can practice some trouble-free maintenance. And that's again what our primary focus for today. Measuring the lawnmower height and keeping the blade sharp. If you don't have a sharp blade, you will tend to fray the grass and it will die back and give it a dead color and really put it at risk of fungicides and funguses and so forth. So you want to be sure your blade is sharp. Now, most people call this a lawnmower, but for purposes of today's discussion, we're going to call it a mechanical herbicide. And the reason for that is that if you mow your grass correctly, you will greatly reduce the presence of weeds. Most of the time, it's recommended, the previous slide said 3 inches. I like 3.5 to 4 inches in height because the difference between mowing it at 2 inches and 4 inches reduces your weed pressure, the amount of weed presence that you get about tenfold. There's a fair amount of clinical data research data that shows that lawns that are mowed short will have presence of weed up in the high double digits, 80 or 90 per square yard. If you leave the grass height at about 4 inches, that reduces it probably about tenfold, even to single digits. So the one of the best mechanical herbicides that you'll have, or weed control components, is really the height of your lawnmower. Additionally, and when you cut something, we sometimes let our grass grow up get high. If we do, we should back off and not try to trim it too low. If you cut more than a third off, you put the grass at risk. It will sometimes even send it into dormancy. You get away with it in the early spring, but as the summer progresses, particularly as you get down into June and July, a short cut will do great damage to your yard. It may put it into early dormancy, which it will go into because of drought anyway, but it will put the grass at risk and certainly enhance the weeds. Okay, don't bag your clippings unless there's a good reason to do so. In most cases, you don't need to during the summer. You don't, and in the spring and summer, you don't need to bag your clippings. If in the fall you're still mowing and you have a fair amount of leaves or other things that are on your yard, certainly you can bag those because those keep the sunlight from your grass. But in most cases, you don't need to retain your clippings and throw them away. Bit of discussion about thatch, but in our tall fescue grasses, very little thatch is laid down from the clippings. It actually puts an amount of organic matter back into the soil, which in Henrico County is usually a very good thing. Now, today we're going to be talking about weeds, and we'll separate. This is a good slide to separate the two. We're going to talk about broadleaf weeds, and we're talking about grassy weeds. Now, I think intrinsically you'll probably know the difference, the broadleaf and the fine grass leaf. But in this particular case, buckhorn plantain is in the slide on the left, and crabgrass, which we certainly, if you've been in the yard in the last month or so, you've certainly seen. It is invasive here in the Henrico area and a frequent summer grass. A few of the other grasses and broadleaf weeds that you'll see. Now, let me back up just a bit and say we're going to make a differential between broadleaf and grasses. We're also going to make a differential between whether the weed occurs in the summer or if the weed occurs in the fall. And lastly, whether it is an annual or whether it's a perennial. So those three classifications, those three differentials are key to you making decisions on how to treat things. Now, if you look on the label of one of our herbicides, you'll see literally thousands of weeds listed. But fear not, if you go through the process of saying, is it a grass or is it broadleaf? Does it occur primarily in summer or in the winter? Or is it an annual that comes back through seeds? Or is it a perennial that comes back from the plant itself? You'll be well ahead of the game in making a determination. This is an example of the common Lespedza. You see it frequently in the yards today. Very similar to that is the spotted spurge. The leaf differential here upon the leaf stem is the only difference. The spotted spurge tends to be a little more purple in appearance. And you'll see some of these weeds are quite pretty if you look at them very closely, but you likely don't think so when they appear in your yard. Chickweed is a very common weed that we see throughout the spring and summer. And henbit, which has a kind of a purple tassel on it, is something that you'll readily identify as well. Grassy weeds. Now let's get back to our differential of grassy versus broadleaf. Annual bluegrass is one of the frequently encountered weeds. you'll see this, even when you put down your tall fescue, you'll find some of this blended in, because many times tall fescue has a little bit of a contaminant and some seed that you don't want. But you'll see this in your yard very frequently in the late spring and even into the summer. The annual bluegrass does very well north of our Richmond, our transitional zone area, but it does not do well in the winter heat. Some actually use this as a cover grass in the northern areas, but here it's considered a weed. Bermuda grass and wiregrass. I'm certain that everybody has seen this. I've been asked what the differential is. If you have a yard that is a summer yard, a warm season grass, you call it Bermuda grass. If it's in your flower bed, you call it wiregrass. It's largely the same plant. There are a few varieties of Bermuda grass that are actually designed for yards and golf courses and so forth. Bermuda grass does very well here in this area. It's certainly warm enough. The major issue is that Bermuda, as a yard grass, turns brown during the winter. Broadleaf leaf control. I think that 2,4-D is probably one of the oldest of the herbicides and one of the safest, and is widely used. I think its origins go back to the late 1940s, and it's been used extensively both in yards, in turf, and in field applications. To make it give it a bit more strength in its herbicide potency, it's frequently combined with other agents such as MCPP, MCPA, and dicambra. So you'll see in your herbicides that are on the shelf at your local store, you'll generally see a combination. Harder weeds, there are some weeds that are a little tougher, particularly the weeds that are a bit more herbaceous, and they need something that's a little bit stronger. The triclofor and the carbendazole are a notch up for some of these. Lots of weeds or perennial grasses in your yard. You may need to say, I simply need to kill it all. Whether it's a grass or if it's a broadleaf plant, glyphosate is non-selective and will kill virtually everything that you spray it on. It is contact sensitive, so if you spray it on the leaves, it will go to the roots and it will kill the plant. Glyphosate is probably the more common name is Roundup, but it is in a variety of products as well. But it will kill both weeds and grasses, and so you only apply that when you want to totally take the vegetation back. A few examples of some of the products, and we don't recommend any particular one. What we do recommend is that you look at the label, and that's going to require you to find out what you have in your yard that is a weed or a grassy weed, a broadleaf weed or a grassy weed. If in doubt, I think the most common ones that we've discussed today, you'll see those if you go into your yard today. But if you have a doubt, take a good picture of it and send it to the Extension Service, and they can readily identify most of the weeds and pest plants. But you'll see that the combinations are frequent in most of the products. 2,4-D is commonly in most of the products, but again, with a blend, depending on whether the weed is more sensitive to dieback, or if it's a more hardy weed that requires either a more potent preparation or multiple applications. One of the things to remember is that weeds are most easily killed when they're emerging. So if you have a weed that is coming out, such as the crabgrass that you see so much this time of year, the time to control it is by a pre-emergent, before it gets started. and you actually put these down early in the spring. Generally, when I say forsythia bloom time, in your forsythia blooms, you need to look at putting your crabgrass preventative as a pre-emergent. Let's look at some of the grassy weeds. We've looked at the annual bluegrass previously in the slide, the crabgrass as well. When do you treat it? Again, you probably don't see the crabgrass until the middle of the summer or even this time of the summer, late summer. But when you put it, you need to put it down in mid-March. Again, the forsythia bloom time. The annual bluegrass will not become very predominant until the early fall, and so the preventative that you use there will be in August. Again, most of these are pre-emergents, so you can get the grass. You have a pre-emergent down. When the grass begins to emerge, you get it when it's in its tender stage. Common Bermuda grass, you'll likely find that the glyphosate is the best. There is no selective between a tall fescue and Bermuda grass that is affordable. They are certainly working on some, and there are a few that are being used, but at this point in time, they're very expensive and generally out of the reach of homeowners. Golf courses and so forth have some ability to get these the selectives between the types of grasses. Bermuda grass is very hardy. Even if you use glyphosate and you kill it back and it looks dead, you wait a week or so, you'll probably find a few stolons that have green nodes on them, and you'll likely find that a second application is best if you want to kill it entirely. Bermuda grass has the great propensity to come back even after you think that you've killed it all. Mosses and algae are conditional plants, and by that are conditional vegetation. The mosses generally occur in shady conditions. They don't persist very well in sunlight. The generally restricted air movement, poor drainage. It's a wet soil, and the chemical controls that you've used for these are very short term. The reason being is that you're not changing the environment for the vegetation. If you can drain it a bit better and dry the soil, you can sometimes accomplish that by raising the canopy. If there are trees that are very close to the ground, if you raise the canopy of the tree, you can increase both the sunlight, the air circulation, and thus enhance the dryness. But treating moss and algae is very much a condition of the soil, and you're going to have to make marked changes in the area, and that is both difficult and generally expensive to do. There is a simple weed management program that seems to work very well in Henrico County, and this is kind of a template. But in mid-March, you apply your crabgrass preventer. You don't generally, there are a lot of products that are made in combination, crabgrass preventer and fertilizer, but you should tend not to use these because they will over-fertilize. In previous sessions, we've talked about most of your fertilization occurring in September, October, and November. It's perfectly acceptable to use a early spring fertilizer, but generally you'll use no more than about 20% to 25% of your total annual fertilization. So if you're going to put 3 pounds of nitrogen down in September, October, and November, then you should likely put no more than a ½ pound per 1,000 square feet down in April with fertilization. So crabgrass preventer is best used as a single entity, and you may need to repeat in about 3 to 4 weeks after the first application to get really good control. But this pre-emergent will work very well, and it's what you don't see in August and September that will be the result of your mid-March applications. In April and May, broadleaf weeds that are in your yard, you can use one of the herbicides that you've seen that we talked about earlier. generally a combination of 2,4-D and some other preventative. Again, getting the weeds when they're first emerging, when they're tender, you're going to get the best results. I would also say that spot treatment, if you only have a small area of clover in your yard, use a spot treatment, a small hand sprayer or something to treat that. You don't need to treat, generally need to treat the entire yard unless your weeds are throughout all of your grass and turf. So look at that and determine whether you can treat it as a smaller entity. It's both more economical for you, and you put less herbicide out. In October and November, you need to use your broadleaf weed killers for the winter weeds, those that are occurring that will occur in the winter, and you can consider a weed feed formulation. Now, I do want to caution you. If you are overseeding, or if you're starting a new yard with totally new grass, you need to be very cautious about using a broadleaf weed killer. Now, while it is selective, it generally works on only broadleaf weeds. Almost any herbicide may have the tendency to knock back the vitality of new grass. It's very thin-bladed, particularly your fescues, your tall fescues, very thin-bladed and very susceptible to any type of herbicide. So you want to be very careful in the use of that. And my general suggestion is, particularly if you're starting a totally new yard, get your yard and your grass established. Accept a few weeds. Keep it trimmed at about 3.5 to 4 inches, and then let the grass grow, become more mature, and treat the weeds next spring. I appreciate the time that you spent with us today. If there are any questions, please submit those to Terry, and we will try to answer those. Terry?
Thank you, Davis, for a great presentation. As he mentioned, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat box. You will also see in the chat box, and it's on the screen, where you can access some of these recorded programs that we have. As Davis did a great job, you understand now the importance of being able to identify the weed, because that's exactly when you have to take care of it. So are there any questions? If not, we thank you for participating in today's presentation by the Henrico Master Gardeners and the Henrico Extension Office. Next week, on October the 6th, we will begin a new Tuesday series on trees. Our first topic will cover tree selection for the home landscape, and we'll cover why trees are so important in our landscapes. We will also be happy to answer any questions at that time about trees and gardening in general. Thank you for your attendance today, and have a great day.